All right, guys. Looks like we are ready to get started. Want to thank everyone for coming. We will be covering today a topic that I chose, and I was expecting 5 times the turnout, but I just learned that objection handling may not be the top priority for a lot of agents. But thank you guys for coming. Appreciate it. So I am Olivier Lewis. For those of you that don't know me, and for those that do, we own the Cranford office together, my partner Carl Sanfilippo. And when you are a world traveler like Carl, your voice runs hoarse, and you get to sit this one out. But Carl Sanfilippo with the East Brunswick office, and again, Olivier Lewis with the Cranford office. So today, with objection handling, we're going to be covering a real issue in our industry. A little bit about myself and my background and why I chose this topic is in 2008, I started my real estate career as an agent. I had been licensed prior, worked in some different capacities in the industry, but 2008, I jumped out there and started showing homes, working with sellers, and that was, for those of you that remember, a very challenging time. So I ran across a lot of objections. Market condition objections. I was at a company that wasn't a traditional brokerage, so there were the brokerage objections. I didn't have past sales, so I had those objections. And learning to overcome it and understanding the mindset is what helped me succeed and build my business in one of the most challenging times where a lot of agents ran away and couldn't gain traction. Just getting to the root of what's preventing someone from moving forward and understanding that will help you overcome whatever the obstacle, challenge, hurdle is, and that will lead you to obviously closing the sale. So an objection is not a rejection. It's simply a request for more information. That's a quote from Bo Bennett, and it's true. It's not a rejection. An objection isn't, no, I will never work with you. It's, I'm not sure yet. I have to find out if you're the right fit or if this is the right thing for me to do. So don't look at objections as a rejection. Look at it as an opportunity to show value, showcase your skills, and get to the bottom line with the client. Don't get lost in the objections. People tend to focus on the objection rather than the solution. They tend to get nervous and kind of get trapped in that world. But you can always remember that it's, again, an opportunity to show your value and walk them through what a solution would be. So, does anyone remember a time where a client gave them, and I want some participation, a crazy objection or something that's a little unusual in our industry? Anyone? Always commission? What was the lowest commission percentage you got a request from a seller to? 3%. Anyone else want to share?
Can somebody else show me the house if you're not available? I hate that.
Got it. That's a common one.
What do you say?
Yeah. It's like you're.
No, it doesn't work that way.
Yeah. You're basically on their schedule, and if you can't, who else can show? I've heard this. I've heard, can you pay 1% because I don't want to pay anything, and it's still $5,000 or $10,000 or $15,000. I've heard a lot of objections. I've heard sell my home in 30 days. I'm sure a lot of you have heard that too, right? It's like by the time I get photography, put it on the market, it syndicates to all these sites, and you don't want showings for the first 2 weeks because you're cleaning up, so that leaves me 2 weeks to sell your home. My friend's agent got them the home for $75,000 or $100,000 or $50,000 under the list price. Why can't you do that? Good response. But there's all these objections. Some are a little out of the box and out there, and some are real objections. So let's cover some of the real objections. You're supposed to embrace an objection, by the way. It's not something you should run from. I know agents don't like objections. Does anyone here like objections?
No, because it's a challenge.
It's a challenge. And guess what? If you run from it, you're not going to overcome it. And the underlying reason that the client's not moving forward will still be there. So embrace it. Enjoy it. Because once you can overcome that, you get to the finish line. And if you run from it, you're pretty much running away from the business. So top producers expect objections. You go on enough listing appointments, you work with enough buyers, you know what's coming typically, because it's usually the same things. Occasionally you get one or two out of the box, but for the most part, they're the same objections. So the more you do, the more you're out there, you're going to be prepared and you know what's coming down the pike from the client. You got to get to the underlying reason of the objection. What you hear on surface is not usually just it. So sometimes it will be commission-based, sometimes it will be time frame-based. I can't find what I want, but there's something underlying. I don't want to list yet because there's nothing on the market, or it's a bad time. Figure out what it is. A lot of that is usually a cover for what the real objection is. And again, use this as an opportunity to showcase your talent, build value, separate yourself from the other agents. Because other agents hear these objections and they run away. You run to them, solve their problem. Guess who they connect with? It's you, because you're adding value. So jumping into the top 10 objections that we found. Number one, I want to find a house before I put mine on the market.
No.
And you're shaking your head because this is probably one that we've all heard. Very common. And you got to put yourself in the seller's shoes, seller buyer. It's a real concern, but it's not always one particular challenge or one particular reason why. There could be a lot of underlying reasons. They, a lot of times, are concerned about where they're going to go. I haven't found a house yet. I don't want to pick the wrong house. I don't want to be rushed, right? As agents, our job is to listen. Don't assume you know what the reason is. Don't assume it's always going to be X, because it could be Y or Z. Don't think for them. Listen. Figure out what it is. Sometimes it's financially, they need the money. Sometimes they don't know where they want to go yet. Sometimes if it's a couple, they're not decided on exactly what they want. One wants this and the other partner wants this. So you have to listen to really get to the underlying reason. But a lot of the typical stuff is carrying two mortgages, not being able to afford what they want, uncertainty about what they're going to get for their home, so they're uncertain about what their budget should be. There's a lot of factors, but if you assume, oh, it's just because of this and we'll just do a home sale contingency, that might not be it. Maybe they don't know what they want, so a home sale contingency doesn't fix that, right? Maybe they don't know where they want to go, so offering them a use and occupancy doesn't fix that. So you have to listen to get to the underlying reason. Be understanding. Put yourself in their shoes. Walk them through a client that faced the same thing. And this is coming up more and more. We're in a good market where there's a lot of move-up buyers, which we all love, right? Because you get 2 transactions out of them. So this is a very common thing. Walk them through how you've helped 2 or 3 sellers in the last quarter, couple months, a year, walk through this and what the process was, and you accomplished it with no gray hairs. Offer solutions. Again, home sale contingency, use and occupancy, short-term rentals. Sometimes, listen, you're not going to find a home. You have to prepare them. But if you give them the options and have a solution rather than, yeah, we'll figure it out later, they're more likely to move forward. But you got to get to the underlying objection and the underlying reason and then solve the problem, add value. But showing them options is probably the last strategy you want to use for that, because a lot of times they really don't know what's out there, and you have to be the consultative agent that walks them through everything, and the psychologist. We kind of minored in psychology when we went to real estate school, because that's what we are, right? We have to walk them through. So if they're undecided, they don't know what they want, take this opportunity to add value, take charge, take the driver's seat, and walk them through what their options are and all the solutions. I'm going to jump into another objection. We still need to interview other agents. When you're at that listing table and you hear that, you cringe, right? What do you mean you want to interview other agents? But ask questions. Don't leave that appointment until all of their questions are answered. Saying, great, here's my card, I'll follow up. Worst thing you can do, because if you did a great job, if you answered all their questions, if you solved all their problems, if there was no stone left unturned, they'd be ready to make a decision. You can win them over, but you have to ask the questions. Usually the reasons could be commission, it could be marketing, it could be your experience, could be that you just didn't connect with them, right? You did the presentation, you spoke at them, didn't really get them to interact. There was no real connection. And what happens is, this was great, thank you for the information. I see that you sold some homes, I like your marketing. I have to interview other agents. And that's where you dig deeper, find out why. Part of that is asking the right questions, because it's hard, right? Who here has been on a listing appointment where you can't read the other side? You can't tell how they're swaying. If they're happy, unhappy, if they have questions, don't have questions, because they're stone-faced. They got their poker face on. But you have to ask questions based on, and this is just one way to say it, based on what I presented today, based on what I covered today, would you be willing to move forward? Do you think I'm capable of selling your home? Get them to buy in, because you're gonna get one or two answers. If it's a yes, they've bought in. Great, now you go for the close, right? If it's a no, find out why. Because if you don't get to that why, they will interview another agent, and guess what? They're most likely going to list with someone else, because whatever it was, there was no connection, you didn't answer their question, they're unsure about something, they're hesitating because of whatever reason. That's why you have to ask the right questions. And then when you do, and you win them over, has anyone ever got to do this? Because this is like winning a championship. When they want to cancel that other appointment and you get to make that call. I know we're all competitive, but when you get to make that call and cancel that appointment and you won the listing, you walk out of there like you just won, the Super Bowl. But if you don't ask the right questions, if you don't get to the underlying reason of why they're not ready to move forward and they want to interview other agents, you're not going to get to the Super Bowl, and you're not going to be able to make that call, or they won't cancel that other appointment. But if you do a good job, keep digging deeper, ask questions, you'll get there. Another objection is, we aren't ready yet, we need to finish a couple projects around the house. That's very common. A lot of times we give them some ideas of some projects that they need to do to make it more marketable, add some curb appeal, get it to a point where it will sell a lot faster. So find out what the projects are. Find out cost as well. A lot of times the sellers themselves think that their home has to be pristine, they have to do X, Y, and Z, and there's a lot of cost attributed to that. And sometimes you have to explain to them that you don't get dollar for dollar what you put in. And you may make an update that's so specific, it may hurt you, right? Or you may replace the carpets with new carpet, but then the buyer wants hardwood floors anyway, so you just spent that money for nothing. Yeah, it helps, it shows a little bit better, but ultimately if the buyers want hardwood floors, the new carpet's not gonna make or break it. So find out what they're going to do. Your job here is to create a little bit of urgency and help them along the way. You leave too much time, it doesn't help you. I have a personal saying, time kills all deals. You interview with the seller interviews you. It takes 2 months because they're doing this project and that project. People can get in their ear, their plans could change, life gets in the way, they don't get it done, et cetera, et cetera. So I believe in trying to push them along. Figure out what is it that they're trying to do, figure out cost, figure out if it makes sense for them to do it, and move forward. Another option is, with the I'm not ready yet, I have to do projects to my home, is put it on the market and don't do public showings until you do a broker's open. Offer to get feedback from agents in the area. That helps you with pricing, that helps narrow down some of the projects that you may have considered doing. Maybe it's not worth doing because the other brokers say, hey, you don't really need to do that, or it shows well, or it doesn't show well and you do need to change the carpets, right? So offer that as a solution too, getting brokers in there, getting some colleagues in there, getting your team in there, just to kind of figure out what really needs to be done to the home. Also, while you're doing the projects, I would tell the seller, let me start my marketing. As long as it's something that's not going to aesthetically change in the photos, sometimes there are items that you're not going to see, whether it's an electric update, something with the roof, which as long as the roof's not terrible, you're not going to notice. You may want to start the marketing, right? Just to get them to commit. Again, time kills all deals. I don't want to go on a listing appointment and wait 6 months, 3 months, 2 months to actually get the listing. I want the commitment. we all know that too much time in between, you give the seller too many options. Next objection, we want to exclude someone from the listing. This is a fun one because I've heard a lot of different people that are supposed to buy the home, tenants, neighbors, family, friends, co-workers. I want to exclude everyone that drives a white car. I want to exclude everyone whose name starts with an A to F, right? So we've all had those exclusion conversations and they swear someone's going to buy their home. But the reality is, if they were going to step up and buy the home would be sold and you probably would not be there in front of them. So when you get those exclusions, because I've heard wide ranges of exclusions, I have a list of 15 people. I told all my coworkers, there's a flyer in the cafeteria and everything happens from that cafeteria board. Narrow it down and just remind them, if that buyer were real, they would have stepped up and we wouldn't need to be meeting today. Asking them why they haven't sold it already. But really, you have to accommodate them. There's no way around it if they really have a list or have 2 or 3 people that are interested. We've all had to deal with this, figure out a timeline, put it in the listing, make them comfortable around it. And you and I know for the most part, those exclusions for the most part don't pan out. But also explain to them that in the long run, sometimes it's your marketing. Sometimes by putting it on the market, you create urgency and get someone off the fence. And you shouldn't be penalized for doing your job and creating urgency with someone. So even when the buyer comes back after that exclusion period ends, because some of the pushback we get from sellers is, well, why is the period only 30 days or only whatever you negotiate? What if they're working on their financing and they come back later? Well, what if they don't come back later? Or what if they go out and look at 20 homes and I get contacted from them and I sell them because they didn't know the schools or the tax information or the benefits of living in whatever town it is, right? So if they were able to sell the home to this person, you wouldn't be there. So don't get nervous about pushing back to the seller that, hey, it has to be a strict period. I've had agents come to me that the sellers want an exclusion for the duration of the listing because the buyer could change their mind at any time. Well, they're not really the buyer for that house if they can't make a decision today. So narrow it down, figure it out. You have to accommodate sometimes, but this is a very common objection. We want to try selling it ourselves, right? I think nowadays with the market, the internet, and the fact that people think these third-party sites are the destination and they're kind of equal to us in some sense, to some clients, they think I want to buy this house, you're the agent, I'll buy it with you. Don't worry about mine, I'll just sell it on my own. I got the bulletin board at work. I have an extensive network. All my neighbors want their family members there. I can sell it on my own. This objection isn't always commission-based. I got to tell you, I think most agents hear this and they think it's commission-based. There could be a plethora of reasons why it's not commission. Some of them could be they had a bad experience with an agent. A lot of times they expired before and they want a different solution. Hey, maybe they saw one of their neighbors sell FSBO, right? Maybe HGTV is guiding them to selling on their own. Or maybe they have a friend or family member in another state or that was an agent that can kind of walk them through the process. So they think, I don't really need you because I'm getting the information from such and such. Or I had a bad experience, right? So it's not always commission-based. It could be commission-based, but don't assume it is, because if you do, you'll go after the commission and explain it and sell it, and you're talking about something that they're not concerned about. That's not the real objection. That's why it's so important to figure out what the reason is. Ask the right questions. When you're not asking questions and you're assuming it's commission or it's this or it's that, you're not going to be able to close the sale. And the reason this part of the objection handling is so important is we all generate leads. And as agents, we tend to look for the new lead source and go for the hot lead, right? And go for the new lead and try to convert that. and try to buy the new lead system or whatever new website or new technology. But if we focused on converting what we already have and overcoming the objections or challenges and getting to the root of what's preventing the person from moving forward, we'd have a better ROI because it would cost us a lot less to generate leads, right? If you can convert better, you don't have to spend as much. You don't have to chase every new lead source. You don't have to try every new site that comes up. You'll just master or convert the leads that you have and spend a lot less and be a happier agent. But it's really overcoming those objections. So after finding the objection, show them stats from NAR in regards to them wanting to sell on their own. We know this and it's factual. It's not opinion-based. If they are able to sell their home on their own, they will net less money, period. For years, it's kind of old now, so I don't know if agents are still using it. For years, we used to use the fact that the owner of ForSaleByOwner.com listed his home with a realtor. And if you Google it, that article is still there. And that's a telltale sign that the owner of ForSaleByOwner.com couldn't sell his home on his own and listed with a realtor. So they need us, right? But you have to find out why is it that they think that they could do it on their own? What's preventing them from moving forward with us? We're the professionals, we're licensed, they're most likely working with an agent on the buy side. Why do they think that they could sell it on their own? Don't assume it's commission. Most agents go right for the commission rebuttal, but that's not always it. And if you go for that commission rebuttal and you're not hitting their pain point or their hot button, you won't be able to close it. I got a higher price from other agents. This is very common for those of you that go on listing appointments. And it's a tough one because they have a price in their head before you walk in the door. They, a lot of times, will go with whoever says the highest number because they don't understand the process. But I could tell you the best way to overcome this is how you set up your price delivery. The worst thing you can do is sit across the table from the seller and say, here's 3 MLS printouts, and based on these black and white or color printouts, your home is worth X. Because now it feels like an opinion, right? And if you're doing the one-step appointment where you're just going in once and going after it and trying to close it and not the two-step, they're going to say, well, how did you know to compare my home to these 3 that you're pushing in front of me, right? Or they're going to say, I know that home. Mine is way better. I saw that. Yeah. That's a very common one. So my opinion on this and my strategy, and I've practiced this. We actually did a training in my office yesterday about this. Walk them through how you came to the price. We're not appraisers, so you can never say it's an appraisal. Don't call yourself an appraiser. But I will tell a seller that this is the process that appraisers use, and we mirror the same process. We use comparable sales 6 months within a certain radius, and use the technology. Use your laptop. Use your iPad. Be prepared to walk them through it. Say, this is what an appraiser would do. There's 20 homes. Now let's narrow it down. Which are in your part of town or in your subdevelopment? Your 20 becomes 10, right? Now, which ones are the same quality finishes, same updates, same et cetera, Now your 10 becomes 5 or 6. Which ones are the same square footage or apples to apples the same? And now you just narrowed it down. What happens there is the seller comes to your price together with you. They can't ignore the numbers. Numbers don't lie. They can't ignore the facts. But if you're presenting to them what you think the value is, and you've never seen their home other than that 5-minute tour before you sat down and had this already pre-planned, it creates a lot of doubt in their mind. And you're pushing listings in front of them that maybe they know the homes and maybe they think theirs are better or they saw them already. So you have to be very careful with how you present it because there are agents that buy the listing based on the list price. Now you have to also not bash those agents. We can't talk bad about our peers. So you go in and you know the house is worth 500 and they say, yeah, but I had ABC Realty in and they said I can get 585. And you're like, in what world? You know, this isn't 2007. You can't go in and bash them. Don't talk negatively, just explain. You don't know how they came to that number, but I will walk you through the process of how I value homes, which is the same process an appraiser will typically use. And hopefully together we'll come to a meeting of the minds. Ultimately, it's your decision on what you list for. I'm here to guide you. But if you walk them through the process, don't bash the overpriced person. You may want to tell them you've seen homes overpriced and you aim for the sky, but then you wind up doing price reductions, which hurts you on the back end. That's a better way to say it than, oh my gosh, that person's just trying to buy your listing. Then they're going to tell you to drop the price, drop the price, drop the price. You don't want to talk negatively. Spin it. Spin it in a positive way and spin it in the solution of here's how I'm coming to the price. And when you come to that price with them, it makes your life a lot easier. Worst case scenario, I've literally done this where we're disagreeing on the price. I will show them the competition. So they want to list it at that 585 number. You know it's worth 500. You know that there's better homes on the market or equal homes on the market for 500. And sometimes you literally have to put them in your car and take them to those other homes. Worst case scenario. It's a lot easier for you guys to do that than to sit there and get the calls every other week. Why isn't anyone coming? Where are my offers? Where's the advertising? Do more marketing. Sit 5 open houses. This easy solution is sometimes showing them the competition, and you can't do it online. You can't pull up the listings and say, look, this is better, this is better, this is better, because they will argue with you. When they get there, and you only have to take them to 2. You show them 2 that are comparable or better, priced where they need to be, say this is what you're competing against, and be honest with yourself. How does your home rate to these? Especially if you could find better ones. They can't ignore what's in front of them, right? But on paper, if you push 3 active listings and say, hey, these are nicer than yours, you're showing them a printout.
Can you actually say nicer than yours?
Maybe not nicer, because that could be offensive to some.
Yes.
But if you say, these are better value than yours,
Okay.
How about that? You're showing them a printout. And the printout may not relate to them. It may not resonate. They may say, yeah, I haven't seen that house. Take them. That's the one thing you can do to actually expedite getting it to the right price, listing it at the right price, which will help you sell it. Another objection is, I have a friend, family member in the business. Funny one with this, we were calling FSBOs in my office, got a FSBO on the phone, and went through a 5-minute conversation, and he says, look, I have a good friend of mine, he's walking me through this, he's told me all the stuff I need to do. Worst case scenario, if I can't sell it, I'll just have to give it to him. He's walking me through everything. So the question was, well, how long have you been trying to sell this? Oh, it's only been about 4 months, right? And that's comical, because you can't sell it with your friend's advice after 4 months. You're going to give it to that friend, and you think he's going to sell it after trying everything that he told you to do? And this is a common one, but it's one you can easily overcome. I think a lot of agents run away like there's no shot of this, but this is one that you can absolutely overcome. Cover the magnitude of the transaction. This is, for most people, the biggest financial decision transaction that they're going to make in their lives. And I like to use the $1 million word in my pricing when I tell people you're spending $250,000 versus $225,000, right? $500,000 versus $500,000. And it kind of makes the transaction seem more significant and important when you're putting $1 million spin on it, right? $750,000 versus just a 775. But explain the magnitude of the transaction. And is your friend or family member the right person to walk you through this and to take charge of that transaction? A lot of times they're not. Most of the time they're not. Because if they were, you wouldn't be in front of them. Whether they're a FSBO, whether they're expired, or however you're getting in front of them, if that person were the right one, you would not be there. You wouldn't be having this conversation. It always helps if you have some information if the agent's full-time, because that's an easy conversation. Would you hire a part-time attorney if you were getting sued, a part-time physician if you needed the surgery, a part-time accountant if you were getting audited, right? So that's an easy one that you can play some analogies and they will ultimately fold to that one. Always ask them how they found you. How did you get in front of them? So a lot of times you'll meet someone and have the conversation or be pitching them, and they'll say, oh, well, I have a friend or family member I can give it to. Well, how are you there? You're either finding me from my sales, my experience, or my presence in the market, right? Just remind them that I am the presence. I have market share. You found me because I've sold a lot of homes, and that's what I bring to the table. A lot of the agents that they are friends or family with that they think that they could list with don't have the presence, don't have the sales, don't have the experience. And that kind of makes them realize you're the better fit. Ask them if they've had to fire someone. What if it doesn't work? How will that affect your relationship? Most people have not had to fire someone. And we all know that relationship between a friend, family member, and a seller buyer that goes south ruins the relationship. Just walk them through that. Worst case scenario, we've had to do this. It's not terrible, but you can offer them a referral, right? If they're not the right fit, if they're part-time in Cherry Hill and you're selling up here in Central or North Jersey, they don't have the MLS, et cetera, offer them a referral if you have to. A piece of the pie is better than none. And if that's what it takes, because unfortunately some sellers and clients will work with that person that doesn't know the market just because they feel obligated, just because they feel like that person's not going to make anything and they want to help them out financially, offer a referral. That's an easy solution. But I think before getting there, there's some other ways that you can address that. So this is probably the hardest one, the hardest objection we get. I only want to speak to the listing agent. And there's no magic pill. There's nothing I can say that's going to work for everyone. It's a very tough objection, and it's a mindset. They feel that they're going to get a better deal. They feel that anyone other than the listing agent's the middleman. They think that the listing agent will even cut their commission to push their deal forward. And frankly, being a manager for about 8 years, I haven't seen one of my listing agents ever offer up to reduce their commission or reduce their commission up front just to get a deal through. So that's the mindset, though, and it's very hard to overcome. But ask them, how's that worked out for you so far? Because we know how this works. They're calling listing agents. By the time they're seeing the listing on these third-party sites, the listings are either sold or they're multiple offers, and they're not going to win it anyway. And frankly, if that were working for them, they would have found a home already. So walk them through it. The problem with this objection is you have a very small window of opportunity to overcome it because then they're moving on. So you have to practice this. This is one that, if you want to role play one objection, this is a common one that you have to learn to overcome. Another solution is explaining to them that the agents, we're very ethical. We stand by the code of ethics. That's what governs and guides us. And just because they are representing both sides doesn't mean that they're going to push your offer through. I've had to say to people, there's no shredder that other offers get shredded through, and they have to be very objective to present every offer regardless of commission or what's in it for them. So if there's a stronger offer, the sellers will always take it. So walk them through that, explain it, try to get them to understand how this really works. Another quick tip is I don't ever say listing agent to clients because that's our jargon, that's our term. I say seller's agent. And I explain to them that they have a contract with the seller. They are the seller's agent. They work for the seller. Is that the person that you want representing you also? Imagine if you're in a lawsuit and you're getting sued. Would you call that attorney that sent you that lawsuit and say, I want you to represent me also? You wouldn't, right? And that's how you have to approach that. But if you set it up that you really don't want to work with the seller's agent, here's why, and explain the benefits and the value that you bring, you have an opportunity. Explain to them too, which is absolutely the case, a lot of the big listing agents will never work with the client because they're going to pass it on to someone on their team. So either way, they're not working with the listing agent. And that's very common now. We have a lot of teams. We have a lot of listing agents that aren't even teams, but they're still referring out to buyers because it's not their business practice. And you have a lot of agents that don't like dual agency because of the exposure. I've managed a lot of agents that will not do a dual agency. So trying to get to the listing agent isn't always the solution. By the time you get there, you may lose out on the property. How's that worked for you so far, right? You haven't found a home yet. and you're making these random calls after calls after calls, trying to get to that source. And because they're using third-party sites, they have to make sometimes 3 or 4 calls to actually find the listing agent, or the buyer agent's calling back, or another agent that the listing agent's referring it to. So walk them through that. But it's a tough mindset to overcome. You have to really show value, and this is where you have to step up and bring your A game, and hopefully enough practice, you'll be able to master that. Will you cut your commission? Other agents will. So a good saying with this is, I'm not looking to be the cheapest, looking to be the best solution for you, right? But this is very common. Some markets, it's more dominant that the agents are just taking lower price commissions just to get a listing, and they're driving the listing agent business, they're making it tougher. But explain your job is to market to not just buyers, it's also to sellers. This has actually been an angle that I've always used when someone wants a discounted commission. Half of my job, Mr. Seller or Mrs. Seller, is not just to drive buyers here, it's also to drive the other realtors that have the buyers. Yes, I can source buyers. I will do everything in my power. I would love nothing more than to find the buyer for your home. But what about the other 2,000 agents in our marketplace that may have a buyer? I want this to be very attractive to them, and I want them working for us. You not only hired me, you hired every agent in New Jersey, right? They have the multiple listings. We're co-broking, so you're hiring us. Don't push them away by giving a salesperson less of an incentive. So the commission is not just padding my pockets. It's actually part of my marketing, because I'm marketing half to buyers, half to other agents.
I told a guy, he wanted like 4%. I said, let me ask you a question. If I give it to you on the front end that easy, how would you feel when I'm negotiating for the best price for you on the back end if I'm doing the same thing? He didn't know what to say.
That's spot on. If I can't negotiate for myself, how am I going to negotiate for you? If I'm willing to give up my own money, what do you think I'm going to do with yours, right? But that's spot on. That's an easy one to overcome. But you have to find out, again, what the real reason is behind that. Do they think they're saving money? Do they think we get paid too much? And as the price increases, you sell a $750,000 house, $1 million house, and they look at that number, oh my gosh, I'm paying $50,000 or $60,000 or $40,000 to sell my house. Sometimes that's the objection. Sometimes they feel like, hey, I bought the house, the agent showed me 3 homes, like HGTV, I picked one, and at the closing, I saw that they got a $20,000 check for a couple hours worth of work. Figure it out, find out, ask questions. Discounting the commission only hurts them. Let them know that. Again, we're not padding our pockets. I've had agents tell me that they've explained that the broker gets a piece, they get a piece, the other agent gets a piece, the other broker gets a piece. I don't love that so much because I think it's exposing too much of our dynamics, but I think explaining to them that we are marketing to agents as well as half of it, that helps. Cover net numbers. Ultimately, if you're netting what you need to move on, it should work, right? Another option when you're covering net numbers is their expectation on what they can get for the home may have been lower. So if I can yield you more, and yes, maybe you're expecting to pay 4% or 5%, but that 1% difference is higher than what you thought you would get, and we built it into the price, it works. There are ways when you're covering the net numbers to show value and explain to them. The other option is you list it at a lower commission, you get less activity, that leads to a lower price, you're losing more. So depending on the price of the home, think about it. A 1% difference is $3,000. We've had bidding wars, we have stuff go over asking price. Can you sometimes build that into the price, right? Instead of fighting them on the percentage, look at the real number and build it in. But you got to go over net numbers to get there. And sometimes there's some fun illustrations that gets them to understand because a lot of people are visual. So Mrs. Seller, would you sell, if you're an agent, would you want to really push the house you get paid 2%, 2.5%, or 3%? We're salespeople, by the way. Right? So sometimes you have to illustrate it. But again, this is a fine line. because you don't want to make it all about the commission and padding your pockets. You don't want to make them feel like, you're driving up in your Mercedes and this is how you get it. But you have to explain to them, we're marketing to agents as well as buyers, and that's the truth. I don't know the exact percentage, but I'm sure it's north of 60% of homes that are co-broked versus double-ended, right? So more times than not, it's another outside agent that is selling that home, and it's probably way higher than 60%. I'm actually going to Google that when I get back to the office. But we market to agents as well. And how do you market to agents? You make it accessible, you communicate, but one of the big drivers is you incentivize them. They're salespeople. So come up with some illustrations, whatever you need, but walk them through the process. Last one, number 10. I'll be ready to list or buy in 6 months. Very common, you're right. All the time. And coming off of the holiday season, that's when a lot of it comes. Easy ways to overcome that. This business should not be seasonal. Agents kind of look at me weird when I say that. Yeah, there might be some highs and lows, but it shouldn't be peaks and valleys. Maybe there's a dip around the holidays, and I understand, but it doesn't mean your business stops. I have an agent that I used to manage, and I kid you not, he did his best months in November for years. He'd do 10 or 11 deals in November, and I couldn't understand why.
It's a slow season. There's always somebody who wants to buy or sell. So.
People take their foot off the gas. No one's answering their phone. And for him, there were other reasons with his clientele of why, but it's not a seasonal business if you don't treat it like a seasonal business. But ask questions why they're not ready. Whether it's doing work to the home, whether it's a buyer and they need to save up some down payment, whether they're fixing some stuff, whether they're unsure what they want to buy, whether they think the spring's a better time to sell. You have to find out what the real reason is and why. But you have to ask questions. Don't assume it's the spring market. Don't assume it's they can't find another home yet. Ask them the question because there's a lot of different reasons. Cover the market conditions and demonstrate to them, which is so easy, but we forget to do the basics sometimes. Demonstrate to them that, hey, all these deals that are closing in January, February, March, guess when they got put together? November, December, January, right? So things happen. There's always sales. We can demonstrate that to them. We have the data. Zillow doesn't really show them that. We can. But once you can show them that these things sell and explain to them, which we've all done and all know, motivated buyers will come out in the holiday season. And you want those motivated buyers. It's better for you. You don't have 20 people trekking to your door, you have 5, but they're serious and there's urgency. If they're willing to come out in the snow in the middle of the holidays, in the cold, that's someone that's ready to write an offer. Explain to them that spring is more competitive for you as the seller, right? You have 5 homes on the market in the winter and you have 15 to 20 in the spring. What does that mean? The buyers have more selection. You better have the best priced home, the most move-in ready home, because you're competing against more homes in the spring. Sellers don't tend to realize that. Buyers as well say, hey, there'll be more inventory on this in the spring, I'll put it on hold. There will be more inventory, but there will also be more buyers typically. And if the right home comes up today, why not buy it? But you have to ask the questions to figure out what the underlying reason is that they want to put it on hold. Discuss rates. Discuss the volatility in the market or uncertainty in the market. There's a lot of factors. Sometimes even with the buyer, you have to just cover the basics with them. What are you paying rent? $1,500 a month. Great, so that's $18,000 a year. If you wait 6 months, that's another $9,000 that you're paying your landlord's mortgage. Everyone's paying a mortgage. It's either yours or your landlord's. Do you want to pay another $9,000 to your landlord's mortgage or $9,000 to yours? Right? Cover that. Cover rates with them. As rates are going up in the market that we're in, although they've taken a little dip, but then they're back up, you're not going to get that 3% rate that was offered 2 years ago. And if you look at where the rates are going, talk to your mortgage person. If they go up, it doesn't work in your favor because it costs you more to buy and own the same house. Increase in market value. again, prices could go up. As we've seen in most markets here in New Jersey, an uptick of a couple percentage points every year since we came out of the crash. So again, do you want rates going up, prices going up, and it costs you more to buy the same house? For sellers, discuss the impacts of the rates. The buyer's buying power is diminished when the rates go up because it costs them more. Uncertainty, the market could go both ways. A lot of people and economists are talking about a cooling off. So that's not necessarily in your advantage. No one has a, magic crystal ball that they could predict what's going to happen. So you can't go out there and scare people, but just say you don't know what can happen in the future. Even the upkeep of the house. Something goes wrong with your furnace, you get a leak, the roof starts to leak. Now you have to put more money into it versus if you got out of it 6 months prior. Not saying we're trying to sell anyone a lemon, but sometimes time kills deals and time creates and allows for things to happen. Cover the seriousness and the urgency that they have. Figure out what their hot button is, why they want to move. What's the reason for the relocation? What's the reason for the new house? What's the reason for downsizing? And that's what you really should focus on. But you have to ask questions. So, a couple takeaways from this. I think objection handling is something that if you focus on and you learn to be a good listener, a great listener, and really get to the underlying reason, because what you hear up front is sometimes a cover, because they don't want to tell you that there's some problems, or they're unsure, or they don't know, or they're too nervous, so they cover it up with a time frame issue, or I can't find what I like, or the market's not the right time. It's an opportunity. It's an opportunity, it's not a rejection. Look at it as an opportunity to showcase your talents. Look at it as an opportunity to build value with the client. Look at it as an opportunity to show them that you're a problem solver and you're the best one to hold their hand from contracts to closing. Embrace the objections. Don't run from it. Don't ignore it. Don't act like you didn't hear it. Don't dance around it and answer other questions. You have to learn to embrace and face the objections. It's the one thing that will lead to you getting to the finish line a lot faster and being able to close the deal. Ask questions. If you don't know the questions to ask, find them, Google them. But you have to ask questions. You can't assume. Not everyone has the same objection. Not everyone has the same underlying reason. Not everyone's hot button is the same. You have to learn to ask questions. And most importantly, go for the close. We don't ask for the business enough. And we hear an objection and we think we answer it and the ball's in their court, but you have to go for the close. Because if you don't go for the close, that's when they will interview another agent. That's when they will put it on hold. Other objections will come up. Other things will get into their mind. But you have to go for the close. So that kind of wraps it up for objection handling. If anyone wants to chime in, ask any questions, we'll open it up. So you guys are all masters at objection handling?
We are now.
Thank you.
So how do you go for the close? Like what language do you use or how do you end it like to get the seller to sign?
There's soft closes, there's hard closes. It just depends on you and your personality and also your client. You have to be able to read the other side and see who you're on the other side with. But some people ask, are you ready to move forward today? Some people ask, based on everything I've presented, do you think that I would be capable of selling your house? You get them to buy in or say, look, I'd love to earn your business. I'm ready to get started today. I can get my photography ordered. Or can we do the paperwork? Whatever language, you have to know yourself and don't try to not be yourself and go for the Glenn Gary, Glenn Ross close. And also know who your audience is. If it's someone that needs a little more nurturing, take a softer approach. If it's someone that's indecisive and maybe you have to push them, well, you go for the stronger approach. But a lot of times what we find is agents go in and they kind of cover the objections, and because there was an objection or two, they kind of leave it in the buyer or the seller's court of, well, let me know when you're ready. That's not going for the close. You have to ask for it then and now.
Can you ask, are there any questions that you would like to ask of me? And then at the end, just basically say, what will it take for you to list with me today?
Absolutely. So we've heard a lot of these. What would it take for you to list with me today? Can you see yourself living here? Right? There's a lot. But I always like to make sure I cover everything. So I would ask, to your point of, have I covered everything today? Did I answer all your questions? Is there anything we didn't cover? Because once you can ask that and you know that everything's out on the table, they can make a decision. But if there's something underlying, something in the back of the mind that you didn't cover, they didn't ask, they felt uncomfortable asking, maybe they feel they don't want to pay 5 or 6%, but they don't know how to ask for a discount, right? And maybe asking that question allows them to feel comfortable to ask the question that you got to cover. And if you don't cover it, they're going to say, I got to think about it. Let me get back to you. I got to talk to my financial advisor, my accountant, and not be able to make a decision. So I would always ask, is there anything I didn't cover? Any other questions? Just as I'm done, I'm asking you guys if there's anything you guys want to cover. Get everything out on the table, because then they can move forward. And once you're past that and they've asked the last question, or, oh yeah, I forgot about this, then you ask for the business. If that is it, thank you all for attending. We appreciate your presence, and we don't have a date yet for next month's training, but it will most likely be on listing presentations. So we'll definitely get that out to you guys, and thank you again.
Thank you.